In the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Arctic, where the sun refuses to set for months and the wind carves stories into the ice, lies a tale of geopolitical ambition clashing with indigenous resilience. This is the story of Pituffik, a small Inughuit village in northwestern Greenland, whose inhabitants were uprooted in the name of Cold War strategy. What began as a remote hunting ground for a semi-nomadic people became the site of one of the United States' most northern military outposts, Thule Air Base, now known as Pituffik Space Base. The displacement of this community in the early 1950s epitomizes the broader tensions between superpowers and the marginalized voices caught in their crossfire. To understand this event, we must first delve into the historical tapestry of Greenland, a landmass larger than Mexico, but home to fewer people than a small American city, governed as a Danish colony until the mid-20th century. Greenland's strategic position, bridging North America and Europe, made it a pawn in global conflicts long before the Cold War. During World War II, with Denmark under Nazi occupation, the United States stepped in to protect the island under a 1941 defense agreement, establishing weather stations and bases to monitor Atlantic shipping lanes and gather meteorological data crucial for Allied operations. The Inughuit, often called the Polar Inuit or Thule people, are descendants of the ancient Thule culture that migrated across the Arctic around the 11th century. Numbering only a few hundred in the early 20th century, they lived in harmony with one of the harshest environments on Earth, relying on hunting walrus, seals, and narwhals from kayaks and dog sleds. Their settlement at Pituffik, meaning the place where dogs are tied, was a cluster of turf huts and wooden structures nestled on the Dundas Peninsula. Near Mount Dundas, this location was ideal for their way of life. The northernmost reach of the Gulf Stream brought nutrient-rich waters teeming with marine life, sustaining their semi-nomadic existence for generations. European explorers, like British naval officer John Ross in 1818, first encountered them here, dubbing the area Thule after the mythical northern land in ancient Greek lore. In 1910, Danish explorer Knud Rasmussen established a trading post at Thule, introducing modern influences like a hunter's council in 1927 and Christian missionaries. Yet the Inughuit largely preserved their traditions amid growing external pressures. The post-World War II era amplified these intrusions as the Cold War dawned, pitting the United States against the Soviet Union in a nuclear arms race. Greenland's proximity to the Soviet heartland, offering a shorter flight path for bombers, made it invaluable. In 1951, under the veil of secrecy, President Harry Truman approved Operation Blue Jay, a massive engineering feat to construct a strategic airbase at Thule. This operation was born from the Korean War's escalation and fears of Soviet aggression, aiming to position long-range bombers like the B-36 Peacemaker closer to potential targets. The project was classified, with public announcements delayed until construction was well underway. Planning for Operation Blue Jay commenced in Norfolk, Virginia, where an armada of 120 ships assembled, laden with 300,000 tons of cargo and 12,000 personnel from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Navy, and Air Force, valued at over $125 million, equivalent to billions today. The equipment included everything from bulldozers to prefabricated buildings. The convoy set sail in June 1951, navigating treacherous ice-packed waters of Baffin Bay to reach Thule by July 9th. Upon arrival, workers faced immediate challenges, unloading massive supplies onto a barren, permafrost-covered landscape under 24-hour daylight. They built temporary docks, roads, and shelters first, racing against the short Arctic summer to avoid the plummeting temperatures that could drop to 5 degrees in winter. The construction was a marvel of logistics comparable to the Panama Canal, in scale erecting a 10,000-foot asphalt runway, hangars, barracks for thousands, fuel storage tanks, and radar installations. By 1953, the base was operational, serving as a hub for Strategic Air Command (SAC) operations, including refueling stops for nuclear-armed aircraft. Yet, this triumph of American engineering came at a profound human cost. The Inughuit village at Pituffik stood directly in the path of progress. In 1951, as construction began, initial displacements occurred, with some huts cleared for the airstrip. But the full eviction came in 1953, when U.S. officials requested expansion for an anti-aircraft artillery unit, encompassing the entire Dundas Peninsula. Danish authorities, under the 1951 Defense Agreement that allowed joint U.S.-Danish operations, granted permission without consulting the Inughuit. On May 25, 1953, Danish officials informed 27 families, 116 people in total, that they must leave immediately, while the sea ice still allowed dog sled travel. Within days, they abandoned their homes, school, hospital, church, radio station, warehouses, and graveyard. The families were relocated 97 kilometers north to a hastily built settlement called Qaanaaq, initially New Thule, where prefabricated wooden houses awaited, shipped from Scandinavia. The relocation was abrupt and coercive, with no compensation or choice offered. The Inughuit, who had lived at Pituffik for millennia, suddenly found their ancestral hunting grounds, spanning 2,943 square kilometers, designated as a restricted defense area. Access to traditional sites for seal hunting and fishing was curtailed, disrupting their food security and cultural practices. Many families left behind personal belongings, and their original houses were later burned down by U.S. forces to prevent reoccupation, while the church was dismantled and moved elsewhere. This forced migration was disastrous for the community's social fabric. Elders spoke of profound grief over losing connection to their land where generations were buried. The new site at Qaanaaq, while equipped with modern amenities like running water and electricity, was unfamiliar terrain with poorer hunting conditions due to thicker ice and fewer marine mammals. Additionally, the Canadian government restricted Inughuit access to Ellesmere Island, another ancestral hunting ground, compounding the hardship. The displacement highlighted the colonial dynamics at play. Greenland, still a Danish colony until Home Rule in 1979, had little say in decisions affecting its people. The Inughuit, absent from Greenlandic nationalism brewing in the south, were particularly vulnerable. U.S. motivations were purely strategic. Thule provided a forward base for monitoring Soviet activities and launching potential strikes, but the human element was overlooked. Decades later, survivors like Regina Christiansen, who was among the evicted, recounted the trauma. Families crammed into temporary igloos during transit, children separated from familiar landscapes, and a sense of betrayal by Danish overseers who prioritized alliance with America over indigenous rights. As the base grew, so did its role in Cold War deterrence. By the late 1950s, Thule hosted Ballistic Missile Early Warning System (BMEWS) radars at J Site, detecting intercontinental ballistic missiles over the North Pole. It supported Project Iceworm, an audacious plan for a network of mobile nuclear missile launch sites under the ice sheet, tested at Camp Century, a nuclear-powered underground city built from Thule in 1959. Though Iceworm was abandoned due to shifting ice, the base's importance peaked in the 1960s with up to 10,000 personnel. Nike Hercules missile sites guarded against aerial threats, and B-52 bombers conducted Chrome Dome patrols, keeping nuclear weapons airborne 20-hour-7. This militarization further alienated the Inughuit, who were barred from vast swaths of their territory. In 1968, disaster struck when a B-52G Stratofortress, carrying 4 hydrogen bombs, crashed 7 miles from the base during an emergency landing attempt. The conventional explosives detonated on impact, scattering radioactive plutonium across 6 square kilometers of sea ice. No nuclear explosion occurred due to safety features, but the Broken Arrow incident contaminated the area, affecting local wildlife and potentially the food chain. The cleanup, codenamed Project Crested Ice, involved over 700 U.S. and Danish workers, including Greenlandic civilians, removing 10,500 tons of irradiated snow and ice shipped to the U.S. for disposal. Many Danes worked without protective gear, leading to health concerns like cancer clusters reported in later years. The Inughuit, reliant on hunting in nearby waters, feared long-term contamination. Rumors persisted of a lost bomb, though a 2009 Danish review confirmed all 4 were accounted for, albeit destroyed. This accident amplified calls for accountability, with nearly 200 Danish workers suing the U.S. unsuccessfully in 1987. For the displaced community, it was another layer of injustice, their relocated lives now shadowed by nuclear fallout risks. Legal reckoning came slowly. In the 1990s, as Greenland gained autonomy, the Inughuit organized as Inughuit 53, named for the relocation year, pursued justice. In 1999, Denmark's Eastern High Court ruled the eviction violated indigenous rights, awarding compensation. However, the Danish Supreme Court in 2003 overturned this, deeming the relocation legal under the era's laws, but acknowledging it as an expropriative intervention and serious interference. The tribe received 500,000 Danish kroner, about $75,000 USD, with individuals getting 15,000, 25,000 kroner each. Unsatisfied, Inughuit 53 appealed to the European Court of Human Rights in 2004, but the case was deemed inadmissible as domestic remedies were exhausted and the compensation adequate. The ruling sparked debate. Was monetary compensation enough for cultural erasure? Survivors argued it failed to address loss of land rights or ongoing restrictions. In 2009, a UN Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Rights noted the expansion in 1955 further encroached on Inughuit territory without consent, recommending restitution. By the 2010s, climate change added irony. The permafrost underpinning the base and Quanach's homes was thawing, threatening infrastructure while melting ice opened new hunting challenges for the Inughuit. The base's area was reduced in 1986 by agreement, and the Dundas Peninsula returned to Danish control in 2003, allowing limited Inughuit access, but scars remained. Today, Pituffik Space Base, renamed in 2023 to honor the original village, operates under U.S. Space Force Command, hosting 150 personnel for space surveillance, missile warning, and satellite operations. It supports NORAD and NATO with a deep-water port and annual resupply missions. Multinational staff, including Danes and Greenlanders, fly both U.S. and Danish flags as per treaty. Yet, tensions persist. In 2025, amid U.S. discussions under the second Trump administration about acquiring Greenland for strategic reasons, base commander Colonel Susanna Myers was dismissed after affirming commitment to Danish sovereignty, highlighting ongoing power dynamics. The story of Pitufik's displacement transcends a single event. It's a microcosm of indigenous struggles worldwide against militarism and colonialism. The Inughuit, now around 900 in Qaanaaq, preserve their language and traditions, hunting with harpoons, storytelling in igloos, amid modern challenges like high fuel costs and permafrost instability. Their colorful wooden homes, echoes of Danish post-war design, stand as symbols of adaptation, yet elders like those in Inughuit 53 remind younger generations of the lost homeland, advocating for land rights and environmental justice. As Arctic geopolitics heat up with new players like China and Russia vying for resources, the base's future remains pivotal. Will it foster cooperation or further marginalization? The Inughuits' resilience offers hope, but their history demands we listen. Progress must not come at the expense of people tied to the land. This narrative, drawn from declassified documents, court rulings, and survivor accounts, underscores the human cost of secrecy and power. In the end, Pitufik's legacy is not just a military triumph, but a call for reconciliation in an increasingly contested Arctic.